They told me to stop talking the night my world fell apart. I remember standing in the middle of the living room, trembling, my hands still wet from washing dishes, when my daughter-in-law looked at me and said, "You talk too much, Mom. You complain, you cry, you make everyone uncomfortable. Why can't you just stay quiet?" Her words cut through me like a blade. I stood there, speechless, my throat dry, my heart heavy. I turned to my son, hoping he'd say something, anything, but he just sighed and walked away. That silence hurt more than her words. It was the silence of someone who had already chosen a side. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, the lamp casting soft light on the faded wallpaper. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I thought about how many times I had swallowed my feelings for the sake of peace. How many times I had smiled through pain, or said, "It's okay," when it wasn't. I thought silence made me stronger. I thought silence kept families together. But I was wrong. Silence only made me invisible. When I tried to speak again that night, my voice cracked. Not from weakness, but from years of holding back words that wanted to live. My daughter-in-law's voice echoed in my head, "Just stop talking." And for the first time in my life, I did. I stopped defending myself. I stopped explaining. I stopped being heard. But as I sat in that small room, the walls closing in around me, I made myself a promise. If they were going to take my voice away, I'd find another one. A louder one. One they could never silence. Hi everyone, my name is Evelyn, and thank you for listening to my story. Before I tell you what happened next, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We share real, emotional stories that remind us how strength often grows from pain. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and if you've ever felt silenced or ignored, share your story, even a few words. Because sometimes, speaking it out loud is the first step to healing. Now, let's go back to that night. I sat there in silence, but my mind was louder than ever. Every memory, every sacrifice, every time I had been overlooked came rushing back. I remembered my younger days, the woman I used to be, brave, bold, full of dreams. And I realized that somewhere along the way, I had buried her. So I opened the drawer of my bedside table and took out an old notebook, its pages yellowed with time. It was the same notebook I used to write recipes in when my husband was alive. But that night, I didn't write about food. I wrote about me, my fears, my mistakes, my love, my silence. Tears fell on the paper as I wrote. Each word felt like breathing again. Each sentence felt like reclaiming a part of myself that I had lost. I wrote until my hand cramped, until the lamp flickered, until the sun started to rise outside my window. When morning came, I looked at those pages and whispered to myself, maybe this is my voice now. I didn't know it then, but that small act, writing down my truth, would change everything. Because the very next week, something happened that would turn my quiet little notebook into something much, much bigger. Something that not only gave me back my voice, but made sure the whole town heard it. The week after that night, I felt like a ghost in my own home. My son barely looked at me. My daughter-in-law only spoke when she had to. The air in the house felt colder, heavier, as if every word I didn't say was hanging in the silence between us. But every night, when they went to bed, I took out that same old notebook and wrote. I poured out everything, memories, regrets, prayers, even anger I didn't know I still carried. Writing became my secret rebellion. One afternoon, when the house was empty, I made myself some tea and sat on the porch with my notebook. The sunlight touched the pages, and for a moment, I felt calm, like the world was finally listening. I didn't notice my granddaughter, Lily, standing by the door, watching me. She was only 12, with bright curious eyes and a heart that still believed in good things. "What are you writing, Grandma?" she asked softly. I smiled. "Just my thoughts, sweetheart." "Can I read it?" she asked, stepping closer. My first instinct was to say no. Those pages held my deepest wounds, my truth. But something about the way she looked at me, innocent, kind, eager to understand, made me pause. "Maybe one day," I said gently. "When you're older." She nodded and ran back inside, her ponytail swinging. I didn't realize then that she'd remember that notebook, and that it would soon find its way into hands I never intended. A few days later, while I was out buying groceries, Lily came to visit again. My daughter-in-law was cleaning the house and, without thinking, told her to tidy my room. That's when she found it, the notebook tucked beneath my pillow. She opened it out of curiosity and began to read. When I came home that evening, the atmosphere felt different. My daughter-in-law didn't meet my eyes. My son avoided me. Lily, however, ran to me with tears in her eyes. "Grandma," she said breathlessly, "I didn't mean to, but I read your stories. They're beautiful. You have to show people." Before I could respond, my daughter-in-law interrupted sharply. "Show people? Absolutely not. That's private family business." Her tone was cold, but I saw something flicker in her eyes, fear. She had read it too. That night, I sat quietly, clutching my notebook to my chest. I didn't blame Lily. In fact, part of me felt grateful that she'd seen it. Maybe it was time someone did. But the next morning, something unexpected happened. Lily had taken one of the pages, the one where I wrote about losing my husband and learning to survive, and showed it to her teacher at school. The teacher was moved to tears and asked if she could share it during the local community reading event. When I found out, my heart nearly stopped. "You did what?" I asked Lily, my voice trembling between shock and disbelief. "I just wanted people to hear you, Grandma," she said softly. "You always say your voice doesn't matter anymore. But it does. It made me cry. It made my teacher cry too. At first, I was terrified. What would people think? What would my family say? But something inside me whispered, maybe this is how your voice comes back." That Saturday, I went to the community hall, clutching my notebook with shaking hands. The room was small but filled with faces, young, old, strangers who didn't know my story yet. When the host called my name, I almost didn't stand up. But then I saw Lily in the front row, her little hands clasped together, her eyes full of belief. So I walked up to the stage, took a deep breath, and began to read. My voice trembled at first. The words felt heavy, fragile. But as I spoke, something inside me broke free. The silence that had lived in me for years began to crumble. The more I read, the stronger my voice became, louder, steadier, alive. People listened. Some cried. Some smiled. For the first time in years, I felt seen. When I finished, the room was silent for a moment, then it erupted in applause. I could barely hold back my tears. I looked at Lily, and she mouthed the words, "I told you so." That night, as I walked home, my heart felt light for the first time in a long while. But when I stepped through the front door, my daughter-in-law was waiting for me, her face pale, her voice sharp. "How could you do this?" she said. "You embarrassed us. You made everyone think we treat you badly." I looked at her calmly and said, "I didn't tell lies. I just told the truth. Her jaw tightened. Well, maybe some truths should stay quiet. I smiled softly. That's what you all wanted, for me to stay quiet. But my silence was killing me. And if my words make people uncomfortable, then maybe they needed to hear them. She didn't respond. She just turned away. But I knew this was only the beginning. Because the next morning, something happened that would turn my story from a small town reading into something that would reach far beyond anything I could have imagined. And what happened next, no one in that house was prepared for it. The morning after the reading, I woke up to the sound of my phone ringing non-stop, though it wasn't really my phone, it was my son's. From the kitchen, I heard his voice, low and tense. Yeah, that's her. My mother. When I stepped out of my room, both he and my daughter-in-law were staring at me, their expressions unreadable. Mom, he said slowly, your story, someone filmed it. It's everywhere. People are talking about it online. I found. What do you mean, everywhere? He handed me his phone. On the screen was a video, me, standing under those yellow lights in the community hall, reading from my notebook. The caption said, an old woman's voice the world needs to hear. I watched myself speak, the tremor in my voice, the truth in my eyes, and then I saw the number at the bottom. Hundreds of thousands of views. I didn't know whether to cry or laugh. My words, once hidden inside a dusty notebook, were now flying across the world. People had left comments, strangers saying my story reminded them of their mothers, their grandmothers, of pain they never spoke about. Some said it gave them courage to tell their own truth. But not everyone in my house was happy. My daughter-in-law slammed a cup on the counter. Now everyone's gossiping about us. You've made us look like monsters. I looked at her calmly. If you had treated me with kindness, you wouldn't be afraid of the truth. She glared at me, but she didn't answer. My son tried to speak. Mom, maybe you should let this die down, but I only smiled. No, son. I've been dying down for years. Now it's my turn to live. That night, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I sat on the porch again with Lily beside me. She held her phone, scrolling through all the comments from people who had written things like, you reminded me to call my grandma, and your words healed something in me. She looked up at me and said, Grandma, you changed people's hearts. Her words made my eyes sting. I reached over and took her hand. No, sweetheart. You did. You believed my voice was worth hearing. Days passed, and I began getting invitations, a radio interview, a local newspaper story, even a podcast that wanted to feature my writing. Each time, I hesitated, afraid of attention, but Lily's excitement pushed me forward. Together, we sat at the kitchen table turning my stories into something new. She helped me type them on her laptop, fixing my spelling mistakes, laughing when I struggled with the keys. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I wasn't invisible anymore. But one evening, when the house was quiet, my son came to my room. He sat down beside me, eyes lowered. Mom, he said softly, I'm sorry. I didn't realize how much you were hurting. I thought keeping quiet meant peace. I see now it meant silence. I reached for his hand. You were raised in a world that taught you to stay silent too, son. I don't blame you. I just want you to listen now. He nodded, his eyes wet. I am. I promise. That was the first time in years he had said those words, and meant them. Weeks later, something beautiful happened. The local community center asked if I would start a storytelling group for women, a place where mothers, widows, and grandmothers could share the voices they'd buried for years. I was terrified at first, but Lily squeezed my hand and said, "Grandma, this is your chance to help others find their voice too." So, I agreed. Every Wednesday evening, the small room would fill with women, some shy, some broken, some still finding the courage to speak. I would sit in the front and begin with the same words. They took my voice away, but I found a louder one. One night, after the meeting, I stood by the window looking out at the stars. Lily came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist. "Grandma," she whispered, "do you ever wish things had been different?" I smiled softly. "Sometimes. But if things had been easy, I might never have learned how strong silence can be, and how powerful it feels to break it." She looked up at me with admiration. "You're like a hero in a story." I laughed gently. "No, sweetheart. I'm just someone who finally learned that when they try to silence you, you don't whisper, you write. You speak. You live." The camera of life zooms out, an old woman and her granddaughter sitting together, bathed in warm golden light, surrounded by the quiet hum of evening. My hands, once frail from washing dishes and wiping tears, now hold a pen, strong, steady, alive. And as the screen fades to black, my voice echoes one last time. They took my voice away, but in doing so, they made me realize my words were never meant to be quiet. They were meant to change hearts.